Hey, how's it going, guys? This is going to be a work in progress video here for the SD Cross Silhouette Nightingale, and it's just basically a work in progress video going over the painting of the kit. Now, I normally don't really like to do work in progress videos just covering painting, just because I feel like it's pretty straightforward and there's not really much to show, and just like showing the process of actually painting is probably pretty boring to watch. But I wanted to do a little work in progress video for this, just because I thought it might be kind of interesting for some of you guys maybe to see about like how I go about painting and how I go about choosing the colors, especially colors of primer, is because I feel like that's maybe something that some people might not really be too aware about, that might be useful information for some people. So we're just going to be basically talking about some kind of color theory of painting sort of for this. So that's pretty much it that I want to cover in this work in progress video. This is just a quick, simple build. It's not really anything too crazy that I'm doing with this. I'm not doing any modifications to the kit or anything. I did just do a little bit of seam line removal on it where it was necessary, but really not even that much for that. I think it's like just the head for the most part. So as you can see at the moment, I've got it basically separated. Over here is all the parts that will be in like for the inner frame and all that kind of stuff. Here's all just the red outer armor parts, all the white parts over here, and then I've got the gun up there. So the color scheme that I'm going to go for is a kind of slightly purplish bluish color for it. I've been really on the fence about what color to paint it, because I feel like I've seen the Nightingale painted in pretty much every color under the sun, so no matter what I choose, I don't think I can really get too original with it. It's all kind of been done before. So but I am going to try to do something a little bit creative with mine. But if you're just using gray primer, as most people do, just like regular gray primer, that if you want to have really bright colors, gray primer will tend to dull the colors a little bit. So what I'm going to use, well, I'll just show you the paints, the colors that I'm going to use first, and then I'll explain which primers I'm going to use for them. So for the armor, I'm going to be using Nazca Million Blue, and also this is also a Gaia Notes. They're both made by Gaia Notes. This is from the Virtual On Color series. This is a Kaze Ao, which would be blue wind, I guess. Anyway, so it's two different shades of like slightly purplish blue color that I'm going to be using for those. I'm planning on painting it kind of like the XS Sentinel style, where it's got that kind of like large block camel pattern to it. So I'm going to be doing that with these two colors, with the kind of main color being this more blue color, and then the block pattern being in this purplish color. So anyway, I want these colors to be nice and bright, so instead of using gray primer, I'm going to be using white primer for these. This is just also Gaia Notes. This is just a white primer. It just comes in a larger bottle, just because you use more of that than any individual colors usually, so that's just the reason why it's in a larger bottle. So all the red armor parts I'll be painting in white primer, and then going over everything with this purplish bluish color, the Million Blue color from Nazca. And then I'll put some masking tape bits on that to make the block pattern, and then I'll go over everything again with the Kaze Ao color here for that pattern. So that's that. As for the white parts, I do want to keep these white, so I'm going to be using just Mr. Color, simple, just number 1. It's just glossy white, and so basically I could use just white primer and then white paint on top of the white parts, but it's just that kind of makes it a little bit harder to see getting full coverage. So probably what I'll end up doing for this is I'll take my white primer, and then I'll put like a drop of this purple into it just to tint the primer just a little bit, so that when I'm spraying it onto this part, I'll be able to see where I'm covered. Because if you're spraying white on white, it's a little bit hard to see sometimes where you've got like a full coverage or not. So by adding a little bit of a tint to it, you could also use gray or something like that if you wanted to make it just a little bit off-white to spray onto the white parts. I've found that makes it a little bit easier. And then also once I'm going in with the just white on top of that, then I'll have a slight undertone of just like a little bit of purple under that as well, which will add just a very, very slight tint to the color as well. So that will be nice. And then for all the frame bits and everything, I want them to be pretty dark, so I'm going to be using also a Nazca color. This is Nazca Frost Matte Black, but it's just like a very dark gray color. It's like I talked about. If you saw my final video talking about the PG Strike that I recently painted, I said I don't like to use just plain black, but a very dark gray is a better substitute for that. So this is, while it's called Frost Matte Black, it's not fully black, it's just really dark gray. So I'll be using that. So for the primer for those, I'm just going to use Nazca as well. This is a Nazca primer, and the color is heavy gray, basically Nazca gray comes in 3 different colors: light, heavy, and super heavy. So I feel like the color difference between these is not really going to be that much. This is just like a dark gray, and this is just like a super dark gray. I have some of like the super heavy Nazca primer, but I don't want to use that. It really, at this point, it's just kind of, it really doesn't matter too much, but I wanted to use the heavy primer and then the Frost Matte Black on top of that, just again so I can kind of see more clearly what I'm doing. If the colors are too similar, it's just kind of sometimes harder to see. That said, that's pretty much it. So I'll just be using white and dark gray primer for this kit. You could also use pink. I've done that in the past of using 3 different color primers for a kit. Pink is good for putting under like warm colors. So if you want like a really bright yellow or really bright red or something, then spraying pink under that is a good idea. But since I don't have any of those colors for this kit, I won't be using any of that. I contemplating making like the little vent details, the little like color accents white instead of white, making them yellow, but I thought I just want to keep them white. I want to keep it just pretty monochrome and like white, gray, and then like this blue color. So that's my plan for painting the kit. As for the rifle, I don't know, I usually just kind of choose just a random gray color for the rifles, so this will probably just be in another different color of kind of darkish gray. And for the front crest on here, that was molded on, like the Neo Xeon logo is molded into the front crest, but it was very shallow, I thought, or just like very not very high off there. So I thought doing a reverse wash on that would probably end up being kind of annoying, and it wouldn't look as good because this detail just wasn't raised and sharp enough, kind of. So I'm just going to end up just putting a decal on the front of here instead of having that raised detail. So whether it ends up being a Neo Xeon logo or something, I actually haven't quite decided yet, but I'll just end up putting a decal on there instead of that. So that's one of the very few modifications I've made to this. At the moment, everything's washed and ready to paint, so let's go over and start putting some primer on these parts.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.